Hello again, everybody. It is time once again for the Silver Bullets podcast. I'm Michael Citro.
And I'm Chip Minnich.
And Chip, the Ohio State Buckeyes are 2-1, bouncing back after the Oregon loss against the Tulsa Golden Hurricane. And Kelly Hines told us last week on this show that Tulsa plays to the level of its opponents, and I'm not sure if Tulsa played up or down to Ohio State's level this week.
Now there's a perplexing thought. Yeah, I'm gonna say that they played up, and unfortunately for Ohio State on the defensive side, and I mean we can talk about offensively as well. It was not always pretty or elegant, but Ohio State, they won, but let's face it, going into the fourth quarter, there was some, I don't want to say anxious moments, but some concerning moments. How's that?
Yeah, I would say there were some terrible moments.
Terrible. Terrible is a polite way of saying it.
Yeah, this is not a great season thus far, and it's kind of happening all over college football to some extent, but not to the extent in most places that it's happening in Columbus in terms of just uncharacteristic football in all aspects, and we can get into that. But let's talk a little bit about Tulsa and Ohio State. The Buckeyes win it 41-20, which sounds a lot more comfortable than it was throughout this game. Looking back at our score predictions, this one goes to you. You were really, really close on this one. You had 42-21, so you were 1 point off from each team. That's really good, my friend.
Well, thank you. But let's just say that when I originally guessed that, I didn't anticipate it turning out the way that it did, in the sense that, like, I really thought that this was going to be more of, okay, Ohio State, let's say that it was more, 30, to 30-14 kind of a thing at the half, you know what I mean? And then slowly but surely pulling away and Tulsa getting a touchdown in garbage time kind of a thing. That's what I anticipated. But thank you for the compliment. But yeah, I mean, it was certainly not the way that I anticipated.
Yeah, my prediction was 49-24, so not that much different than yours. Just really some officiating probably kept me from being a little more correct, but it's okay. It's we'll talk a little bit about that too. So you get the victory this week in the score predictions, and neither of us had defensive picks to clicking because I'm going to say nobody on the defense clicked again this week, and you had to call an audible because Zach Harrison didn't even dress for this game. So
right.
I had JT Tuimoloau, and he played and made a couple of tackles, but honestly, if you're a defensive end on this year's Ohio State football team, you've got to take a look in the mirror and figure out why you're not measuring up, even when the competition isn't good.
It's certainly concerning. I mean, we are, let's face it. I mean, we're at the first quarter of the season being done. You know what I mean? In terms of a 12-game regular season, to be 3 games in, and defensively, this team is not even remotely close to where they need to be to be in contention for the Big Ten. I mean, I'm not even thinking the college football playoff. I'm not even going to say secretly hoping. I'm openly hoping that they don't make the college football playoff, because it would just be dreadful if they don't make a dramatic change for a dramatic improvement.
Yeah. So speaking of dramatic improvements, the promise was made after the Oregon game that things were going to get cleaned up, that some responsibilities got shifted around. Kerry Combs was upstairs in the press box for this game. I jokingly said that if the team doesn't improve defensively, the next step is he gets to be in Toledo for the next game. And
Well, I
that's
think,
where you can
yeah.
watch from, because it's ultimately the buck stops with the defensive coordinator. He's the defensive coordinator, and you never can put too much on one person, because something like this, there's a lot of moving parts. You and I talked about it in the preseason. We mentioned our concerns entering the season, and most of our concerns were on the defensive side of the ball, but they were all corner, safety, linebacker. We didn't worry about the defensive line, and the defensive line has been as culpable as any unit on the defense. In fact, you can make up for some poor play in the secondary if you can heat up the quarterback, and this team cannot pressure the quarterback.
No, they can't. I'm glad that you agree that the defensive line is very much. I mean, they are not absolved in this discussion about the poor defense. I mean, it is unbelievable the lack of pressure that the Ohio State defensive line. I struggle to understand when you talk about Javonte Jean-Baptiste. You mentioned Zach Harrison. I know he was out. Uh, Hopefully, he'll be back for Akron. I prefer he not play against Akron if it means that he's back for the remainder of the Big Ten season. That's how important I think his presence is. Um, Tyreek Smith. I mean, we could keep going on and on about these highly rated, heavily recruited players that the Ohio State on third down, they're just woeful. I mean,
Garbage. They're garbage.
they
They are
cannot.
they are a tire fire inside of a dumpster fire, surrounded by porta-john fires.
Ooh, that's quite the visual, and I would say I'm fortunate to say that I'm far from what that would possibly smell like. So, yeah, I mean the third down, the lack of efficiency at getting the opposing offense off the field, it comes down to, I mean, you're hitting it right on the head. The lack of a pass rush is allowing the opposing offense to stay on the field, which means, okay, they get to continue their drives. They get to keep the defense on the field, which makes them more tired. I mean, it's just a dreadful cycle. So I don't know how it gets fixed. It
I
has to
don't.
get fixed, though.
Yeah, it does. I'm looking at this right now. There's 130 teams in Division One. Ohio State's third down efficiency on defense is 126th. There are only 4 teams worse. Those teams are Georgia Southern, Northern Illinois, Western Kentucky, and UMass. That means Akron is better on third down than Ohio State. UNLV is better on third down than Ohio State. Kent State is better than Ohio State on third downs. UConn is better than Ohio State on third down. This is historically bad stuff right here.
It is, and I'm not saying this to be kind of a smart aleck. You and I have watched a lot of Ohio State football, a lot.
Yeah.
For us to be able to kind of, think back to, oh, remember when this team, I mean, and I'm thinking back to, I mean, there were some dreadful in the early part of his tenure. I mean, John Cooper teams, Jim Tressel had, some lulls here and there. It's like you said, I mean, this is historically bad Ohio State defense, and I just don't know how it gets fixed.
The Buckeyes are allowing conversions on third down at a rate of 53.19% of the time. And the really troubling thing about that is that a lot of these are longer than 6 yards to go.
I saw something the other day that had me concerned, and that is, besides all the stats that you're rattling off, is probably in recent memory, I guess, for any of our listeners, people immediately go to how bad at the end of the 2018 season the Ohio State defense was. And that defense is good in comparison to I'm being
I
completely
know you
serious.
are. I know you are. I don't mean to laugh. I'm not laughing
But
like you're.
that's
I'm not laughing like you're joking. I'm laughing because it's such an absurd thing.
it is. It is absurd because I just don't. It really comes down to I look at it where yeah, like I'm of the opinion that the scheme is the issue, but I don't care. No disrespect to uh, Davis Brin, the quarterback from Tulsa, but going into that game against Ohio State, he had not thrown any touchdown passes. He winds up throwing for 450 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, when you don't have any kind of pressure, I mean, now at the end, and I know we'll talk about it in the review, um, they started to, but I mean, it's going to be a brutal rest of the season when Ohio State, when the opponents start to get improved, and they are improved all the
Mm-hmm.
way throughout the conference. That it could make for some very, very uncomfortable situations within that locker room for the remainder of the season if they don't get going.
Indeed. Would you like me to tell you who is number one in third down conversion defense in the country?
I'm going to guess it's that team up north, but please correct me if I'm mistaken.
No. The conversion rate against the number one team on third down is only 15.63%. So they were only allowing 15.63% conversion on third down. It is the Boston College Eagles, coached by.
Jeff Hafley.
Mm-hmm. By the way, Rutgers is second in the country in this stat.
And from what I understand, I know we'll talk about the going around the Big Ten. That's one of the advantages of Ohio State playing the night game is getting an opportunity to see how Rutgers does against Michigan this coming weekend.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting. Let's use the word interesting here, Chip. That the top two teams in the entire country on third down conversions defensively, coached by Jeff Hafley and Greg Schiano.
Well, the Jeff Hafley part, that doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me because, I mean, we all saw the fruits of his labor, so to speak, when he was here. The Greg Schiano thing, maybe, and this is just something I'm just borrowing some of the logic of Gerd and Tom Orr, is that now that Greg Schiano is back as the head coach and he has to oversee everything, he actually has gone back to a simpler is better. Whereas when he was Ohio State's defensive coordinator, that he had way too much time to kind of tinker and fiddle, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's why the Ohio State defense was bad in 2018.
Yeah, it was a Sticks. It was a Sticks Paradise Theater situation. He had too much time on his hands.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was. I went there. It was a deep pull. Kids, you're not going to get that reference.
I got it. Got it.
Yeah. You're an old like me, Chip.
You didn't have to say it, but that's true.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into this game. Not going to go through it blow by blow too much, but Ohio State trailed in this game twice to Tulsa. They got the ball first, bogged down early. Tim Brando will have you know that C.J. Stroud throws high when he's a little excited, and boy, he didn't miss an opportunity to talk about that on the broadcast on Saturday. So the first drive bogs down. Tulsa comes down, kicks a field goal. Didn't really seem to struggle to move the ball at all, and that would be a constant theme in this game. Really, it was Tulsa bogging down that really kept Tulsa from maybe even taking control of this game at times. They kicked a 22-yard field goal to take the lead. Ohio State answered with a 43-yard field goal from Noah Ruggles, and Tulsa came back down, kicked a 31-yard field goal, take a 6-3 lead by the early part of the second quarter. And then Ohio State got going a little bit, started to use Travion Henderson a little more. He had a 5-yard touchdown run for the first of his touchdowns on the day to put the first touchdown on the board and make it 10-6. And then Ohio State ended the half with a 44-yard field goal from Ruggles, and it could have been more at the half. I believe it was the second. Was it not the second quarter with the Denzel Burke interception that was insanely overturned?
Yeah, I believe it was.
I mean, it was called an interception on the field, Chip. It was a great play by Denzel Burke, who is really emerging early in his career as a player who, you can just circle his name and know that he's going to be something. And he made a good play, just stuck his arm in there, and at no point did the receiver appear to have the ball under control or have any clear possession of it. And it didn't even really seem to know where the ball was until Denzel Burke showed it to him after catching it. And I didn't really think anything of them going to replay except for the fact that I thought, well, maybe they think it hit the ground or something. And so when they showed the replay and it clearly didn't hit the ground and it clearly was never possessed by the receiver, I didn't really worry about it. But then they overturned it, and you could see Ryan Day very animated. What? And I think he spoke for all of us in that moment, because there is absolutely no human reason to say that you saw proof that the ball wasn't intercepted.
I agree completely. I think Ryan Day, I'm glad that just the what that was so visible. I'm sure there were other words that were being uttered at that point.
Mm-hmm. I used those words.
Well, you weren't on national television, so
that's true.
I'm sure those were also being uttered, but I'm glad that Ryan Day had the presence of mind to not be, being at least being shown saying them on national television.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, Ohio State had a 13-6 lead at the half, and Chip, that is Ohio State's first halftime lead of the 2021 season.
I never thought about it that way, but now that you mention it, I mean, again, it just goes to show how deep rooted these problems are. I think. I mean, I know we're going to talk about the second half,
mm-hmm.
But it seems as though that the defensive problems have started to infect, for lack of a better word, the offense.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be cleaned up.
So what you're saying, Chip, is what I hear you saying is that if you don't do the things that you need to do to be responsible and keep the plague from spreading, then it in fact does spread.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yeah. I wish there was some maybe real life example we could point to illustrate that.
Oh, I know where we're going with this. Absolutely.
we're going back to the third quarter, Chip. That's where we're going. The Buckeyes did manage to get a stop to start the third quarter, and then it was the Trey Henderson show. 48-yard touchdown. Ohio State, you figure at this point, is going to cruise, but no, because the defense has to go back out on the field. And Montgomery catches a 21-yard pass from Bryn and answers the touchdown with a touchdown. And before the third quarter ended, though, Travion Henderson went 52 yards for a touchdown. And surely now, Chip, this was going to be Ohio State's game.
Well, I can only say, don't call me Shirley, because it was anything but, unfortunately.
Yeah, correct. So, end of the third quarter, Ohio State looked to be in better shape with a 27-13 lead, but back came the pesky Golden Hurricane with a 22-yard pass from Davis Bryn to Josh Johnson this time. And again, this was a problem. It was at least in the first half, Ohio State did a better job of stopping the run than they had in the first two games. In the second half, Tulane started running the ball again, and they were able to vary what they were going to do a little bit as a result of running the football better, and they were able to get some yards and get some points. And then Ohio State scored Garrett Wilson on a 12-yard pass in the fourth quarter to answer the Johnson touchdown, making it 34-20. And then the Buckeyes, finally put the game away. I mean, with under 2 minutes to play, when Cameron Martinez intercepted a pass and went 61 yards for a touchdown. 41-20 is your final score. There was also a touchdown, an interception called back in this game. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the secondary was playing any better. Doesn't mean the defense was playing any better. A better quarterback would have probably stolen this game for Tulsa.
And the thing is, better quarterbacks are coming.
Better offensive lines and better wide receivers, better running backs.
Yeah. I mean, now if there is a blessing from this game is that Ohio State may have figured out, all right, in terms of Travion Henderson, and I know we'll talk about the picks to click, and that maybe, all right, that Travion Henderson, that he deserves to get the lion's share of the carries. Maybe that's what is the one positive that comes out of this offensively. But defensively, I mean, there is just, they were better against the run, but they gave up so many passing yards, just in terms of, like you said, the two touchdowns. I mean, they never ever were in control of this game. So, I mean, it's to say that it's deeply concerning would be understating it substantially.
Yeah, it was concerning, and there was. Did we hear anything after the game about Mayan Williams?
Don't know. I'm glad you brought that up, because it was. I mean, that's the one thing that I have nothing negative to say about Travion Henderson's performance. Yeah, I mean, it was great to see.
Oh, sure.
I'm happy for him that he is emerging as a player that we have been hearing wonderful things about throughout the spring and the summer. The only thing that I will guess is I thought that I read something online that it might have had something to do with Mayan Williams' practice performances, maybe like leading up to that game, that maybe and if that's the case, I mean, that's who am I to say, you should play him anyway. If his practice performance was causing some concern within the coaching coaches, they know full well, hey, we've got a talented running back room. Somebody is going to be there, and in this case, Master Teague, as that complement. I guess I just always thought that it would be, after the performance that Mayan Williams had against Minnesota, and I guess you could say for a little bit against Oregon, that it would be the Henderson and Mayan Williams combo. But
right,
who's just we'll see this coming weekend.
Right, and we do know that the coaching staff, and Ryan Day, they talked a little bit about the Oregon game, and that the running game wasn't good enough, the line didn't block good enough, and they also pointed out that the running backs needed to run harder. And I don't know if that was directed at Mayan Williams or if it was just everybody in general, and then he followed that up with a poor week. You can't have a poor week of practice after that performance. So maybe that's what it was. Maybe there was a minor knock. Maybe it was a combination of things. But certainly was not a bad sight to see Travion Henderson in the game, running through the secondary and into the end zone multiple times. Your pick to click was Mayan Williams for I believe the third straight week.
Correct.
And
It was.
he obviously didn't click because he sat on the sidelines. He was dressed. He just sat on the sidelines the whole game. Travion Henderson was my pick, and oh boy, Chip, did this young man click or what?
He did. I like I said, I have nothing. Don't, and I think you would agree with me. If it would be, I don't want to say a concern yet because it hasn't hurt Ohio State yet. Ball security, a couple fumbles that fortunately Ohio State was able to recover.
Yeah.
But
I think he was down on the second one,
right,
the one where he got hurt.
Right. And I know I can almost audibly hear you gasp. Along with I think every Ohio State fan, understandably. I'm glad that he was okay. I mean, even I thought I saw a comment from Travion Henderson that he thought that his knee was injured, but it fortunately was not. So yeah, I think Travion Henderson definitely he's shown, in the limited times in the first two games, and especially in the substantial times against Tulsa, that he certainly has shown that he is capable of being the number one back on Ohio State's roster.
Yeah, it just was the way this season has played out. I mean, you already lost Josh Proctor for the year. Thayer Munford went down in this game, although I guess it's not expected to be long term. And then Travion Henderson, he went down very awkwardly the way that he was tackled on that play, and he's writhing around in obvious pain, holding his knee, and you just feared that sight because that sight is not often followed by good news or he's okay. That's we've seen enough football to see what that that kind of vision on our screen normally turns into. So it was great that he was okay, just maybe a hyperextension, and he was able to not only play the rest of the game, played well, and set a freshman Ohio State record for yards in a game with 277 yards. When you break an Archie Griffin record at Ohio State, that's significant.
Oh, very much so. I mean, you're talking about something that was nearly 50 years. And when you think about some of the great running backs that Ohio State has been blessed with, since the time of Archie Griffin. And, when you think about, as true freshmen, everyone was understandably raving about, Maurice Clarett, in terms of, how significant he was in that national championship year. For Travion Henderson, in only his third game, to come out and break one of Archie Griffin's records, I think it speaks volumes about the potential that he has to have a tremendous career at Ohio State.
I do too, and if not for that knee problem, at least for a series or two, and then a couple series at the end of the game, he would easily have broken the single game rushing record for Ohio State.
I agree with you. I'm going to ask a question, and it's okay if the answer is no, because it's obviously it's not our decision. But do you think that incident, that play, might be enough to, with Travion Henderson, where the coaches might say, how about wearing a knee brace to protect? You know what I mean? Because I mean, there's so many good players you and I have. I mean, it's understandable. It's like, okay, they kind of are grateful for the fact, hey, I wore a knee brace. It could have been worse if I hadn't been wearing the brace. I mean, what do you think?
I don't know if they're going to go that route or not. I mean, it was a very awkward way he was tackled, and it's certainly not a normal way for a running back to get tackled. But if he's okay, and if he feels better without it, I mean, they might ask him to try it and see how it feels in practice, and if he's okay with it, he might do it. But certainly, you don't want to hinder his explosiveness because that's part of what makes him as good as he is, and he has been every bit the back that was, that we suspected he would be when they signed him, and with his ranking in the country and all of that he's lived up to it. And it's only 3 games in, and he is really the offense right now. Yeah, and I will say that you have to also give it up to the offensive line for playing better this week because he doesn't run through big holes if there are not big holes there to run through.
Yeah, the offensive line, it was very reassuring. You mentioned Thayer Munford leaving the game, and very reassuring to see, all right, Matthew Jones, you're up. And that offensive line didn't miss a beat in terms of the running game production. If it was me, and again, I'm sure Coach Day is listening to every word that you and I are uttering about what should be done.
Of course.
If it was me, I would actually keep Thayer Munford out of the game against Akron based on the fact that, okay, I have no idea how significant the injury is to Thayer Munford. It was enough to, obviously he didn't return to the game, but I would rather, okay, you've got someone very, very capable in Matthew Jones. I would rather make sure, okay, Thayer Munford is 100% ready to go for Big Ten season, especially when you're not going to need him against Akron.
Yeah,
So
I would assume I would assume he doesn't play. When they say it's not a long-term thing, that doesn't necessarily mean he'll be ready to go the next week. It could be 2 or 3 weeks rather than maybe the whole season. But we'll see how it goes. If there's no reason to play him against Akron, as you mentioned, and he probably won't play, as my guess, based on how Ryan Day has handled this kind of thing in the past with lesser opponents, lesser non-conference opponents, and so I wouldn't expect to see him, especially the way Matthew Jones played. In fact, I thought that the line actually played better after Thayer Munford got hurt, and that's not to slight Thayer Munford. That might just mean that if you have someone who has been taking guard reps for a lot longer, they might just have better chemistry playing the guard role than a tackle. I mean, I mentioned it on Twitter on Saturday. It's you want your 5 best offensive linemen out there, but they're all the same size and mobility, and there's no delineation, and they're all tackles. Sometimes you want your guard to be a guard and your center to be a center. You don't. It's not always bigger is better on an offensive line.
I agree with you. I think it was surprising that Matthew Jones, coming out of the fall camp, just based on the performance that he gave on such short notice last season, when Preston and Duty, going on the road at Michigan State, Matthew Jones was definitely one of the better players on that offensive line. Played well, and the fact that he was supposed to be in competition for the starting guard spot or the center spot, and you started hearing more and more about Luke Whippler and the idea of moving Thayer Munford. So yeah, I think you might be onto something, that they might be better. They might be better served with somebody like Matthew Jones, who is a dominant run blocker.
Yeah,
that they might be better served.
And that's common on the offensive line. If your name is Jones, you're a good run blocker. DeJuan Jones was just mauling people in the run game. He did have some issues a few times in the passing game, but certainly was outstanding in the run game, collapsing that right side. So yeah, getting back to the original, 277 yards for Trevion Henderson. Master Teague ran for 62 more. And Nicholas Petit-Frere got a rush. He got credited with a rush.
Oh, for the fumble recovery.
Yes. Yeah. Go. And there was a time early in this game when that seemed to be the only way Ohio State could get a first down, which is to fumble the ball and have Nicholas Petit-Frere fall on it.
Yeah, it was ugly from the very beginning. When I think back to the very first series, and I agree with Gerd, a tweet that he had is Trevion Henderson did come very, very so close to breaking the very first carry of the game, for a 76-yard touchdown. I mean, it was he did get tripped up, but
he fell on that stupid turf that everybody on Ohio State seems to be having trouble with, but none of the opponents are slipping.
Well, the one back for Tulsa who was wide open, that Davis Brin hit on a on a third down,
Mm-hmm.
he slipped.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Early in the first quarter.
One opponent, and
but, yeah.
several Buckeyes.
Well, I told Gerd, I did tweet at Gerd, because it's one of these things where when they have the Ryan Day press conference, Gerd has made it known that you only get one question.
Yeah.
That you don't have the luxury, unless your name is Tim May. And Tim May he's earned the ability and the right to ask multiple questions and have them answered. But I did suggest to Gerd, are you going to ask about the turf? Because I think that's what we've been seeing for the last couple of weeks against Oregon, against Tulsa, I think that's a legitimate concern.
Yeah, I agree. All right, I want to get to some more of these stats, but I'm gonna put that on hold. Put a pin in that for now. We're also going to take our trip around the Big Ten, and check out what the other teams are doing. We're going to look a little bit at Akron, probably not too in depth, but we'll pick out some stuff that we can watch for on Saturday, and we'll get to this week's picks to click and the score predictions as well in just a moment. Our defensive picks to click again did not. You went with Denzel Burke as a change-up. I guess he was as good as anybody on the defense. I'm going to actually give you a click since you had to just change from a guy who didn't even dress, Zach Harrison. So I'm going to give you the click on that defensive side. I did not get one from JTT, who only had a couple of tackles and not really. He had one quarterback hurry, which on Saturday was one of, I think, three hurries. That's not enough hurries against Tulsa. So, all right, let's get to all that stuff we still need to talk about right after we do this. And we're back, Chip. No guest this week to talk about Akron. I just didn't want to get too deep into it because I knew you and I were going to be talking more about the lack of improvements on the defensive side and maybe a little bit of backsliding on the offensive side. And really, we don't care. Even this bad of an Ohio State team should be able to handle Akron easily. So it's not that we don't actually care. It's just that we figured we would devote more time to the things that we knew we wanted to talk about and less time to an Akron team that we maybe don't want to talk about quite as much. So just to finish off rattling some of the stats off with you, CJ Stroud, up until probably the second quarter of this game, I had heard more people talk about people calling for CJ Stroud to be benched than I had actually seen evidence of. But I did see some of that in my timeline this week, and I'm just, first of all, I want to say third career start, and yeah, he's been sharper in other games, and he's been a little bit off in every game. We do know he's nursing a little bit of a knock to his shoulder. Was the line that he gave? Something, yeah, my shoulder hurts, but life hurts, or something like that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I certainly was not in that camp, and I still am not either in the camp of benching CJ Stroud, because I'm just thinking with the mindset that, as you just said, all right, he's played his third game. Benching him not only would dramatically hurt his confidence. I think, that not everything I think is not necessarily all his fault. I anticipate, this is just my guess, just purely a guess, has nothing to do with poor play, has nothing to do with, message board chatter, any of that foolishness. My guess is that Ryan Day is going to look at this as CJ needs as many game reps as possible.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
And so I anticipate at least a half against Akron. A few weeks ago, I would have said maybe a quarter, because the way that, the way that, I anticipated this season going, which it isn't. But I'm anticipating at least a half, and I'm anticipating seeing not just Kyle McCord, but possibly Jack Miller as well. I think
Yeah.
it would make complete sense to me that you've got it really would not make too much sense considering like what if that shoulder issue that CJ Stroud is going through, what if it does become an issue? You really can't squander opportunities to get your backups into a game against an opponent that you should have no problems with.
Yeah, I agree with that. Interestingly enough, CJ was 15 of 25. He did throw an interception, 185 yards and a touchdown. He was sacked 2 times. The interception was a bad read on his part, and the thing was, it may have just been that confidence that kind of helped him win the job. Is he looked like he checked down to see Travion Henderson and then went back to Jeremy Ruckert downfield, who was in coverage, and thought, hey, I can get that in there. But if he just dumps that off to Travion Henderson, it might have been a touchdown the way Travion Henderson ran the ball.
You're right. And another thing that, I think it's also hindering the offense, and it might have to do everything with that shoulder, but he is reluctant to on any of the plays where you think, okay, well, he's going to keep on this one. He just has not shown any kind of interest whatsoever in running, kind of like what you saw a few years ago with Dwayne Haskins. And that, I think, is also, it's impacting the running game.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think, and again, it might have to do with that shoulder. That if the right shoulder's not feeling well, getting hit on it, by carrying the ball, it certainly doesn't make too much sense. But I would just like to see, like I said, a solid half, and let's get Kyle McCord in, because the people that are chattering for him. I think Kyle McCord definitely deserves some playing time. Jack Miller deserves some playing time, just in case. That's right. The angle I'm taking, just in case. So
yeah, it makes sense. And it's funny because I heard people, I saw more than one person, more than one writer, and some of these guys go to practice, say something to the effect of, we need to see Kyle McCord and Quinn Ewers, not Jack Miller. I'm like, wait a minute, Jack Miller might be the second string quarterback.
And yeah, Quinn Ewers, no offense,
he doesn't know the playbook yet. He's not even been here very long.
Right. I understand all the hype and hoopla. I get it. You want to talk about, really, putting that kid in a, I don't want to say a no-win situation, but a tough situation. You put him in, like you said, doesn't know the playbook well, comes out. I'm as excited as anybody to see, if the hype is justified around Quinn Ewers, but let's hold off on that. If there's an opportunity to get him in, fine. But and it could be this Saturday. I doubt it, but like I'm not sure if you saw it, but the guy who was saying that CJ Stroud's performance was worse than Joe Bauserman. And I'm like, really?
Well, that's ridiculous, because I'm gonna hit you with this. C.J. Stroud now has the Ohio State record for the most yards passing in his first 3 games, and I'm pretty sure Bauserman is not even in the top 5 in that situation.
Oh, absolutely. It was completely ridiculous.
Yeah, Bauserman's probably not in the top 20 yardage for his first 3 games, quarterbacks at Ohio State. So, this is what happens when you have a Justin Fields, a J.T. Barrett, a Braxton Miller, a Dwayne Haskins, and then you get a normal, excellent freshman quarterback. You actually have to deal with some growing pains along the way, and it's not always smooth and easy. But did he throw 4 picks? No. Is he being helped out? No. He's not being helped out. I mean, he lost multiple big plays in this game on dropped passes and another pass that was caught by Chris Olave that was called back on a penalty. And Chris Olave got shut out, Chip, by Tulsa.
I know.
No catches on 4 targets, and one of them's Chris Olave's fault because you could not have thrown a better ball. And one of them is on his offensive line for holding. I don't remember who it was. I think it might have been Nicholas Petit Frere on that play, but I'm not positive. I may be misremembering.
Or maybe Paris Johnson.
Yeah, it could have. Yeah, you're right. I think you're right. I think it might have been Paris Johnson on that play, but yeah, not a good look. There were yards after catch that weren't there. Garrett Wilson caught a 3rd down ball and just seemed to stop when if he would have kept running, he looked to have had an easy route to the get to the edge and get that 1st down. He only needed about 3 more yards, I think, when he caught that crossing route. So there were more yards there to be picked up. There were a couple other drops, guys that weren't on the same page with him a couple times, and it's hard to say whose fault those were. He did get the ball to his tight ends this week. Jeremy Ruckert had a couple catches. Cade Stover had a catch. Gee Scott Jr. had a catch. So he spread the ball around, but no, we didn't get a ball that was caught by Chris Olave that actually counted. But again, if Chris Olave is mad about the streak coming to an end, Chris Olave can look in the mirror because he dropped a pretty easy one.
I agree with you. And when you one of the things that you said that I think has to be continually, just shouted from the rooftops, and it has to be a constant reminder to Ohio State fans that Ohio State fans have become spoiled. They have become spoiled to outstanding quarterback play. And that's not to say, I mean, again, you mentioned in a separate instance about, CJ Stroud's interception, which was avoidable. I mean, it was a bad play. But getting back to the spoiled concept that, all right, yeah, you've had over, let's just say, with JT Barrett, and I know there are plenty of detractors out there, but JT Barrett playing for what seemed like for forever. And then, all right, you have Dwayne Haskins come in and all he does is become a Heisman Trophy finalist, a 1st-round draft choice. Then Ohio State was fortunate enough to have Justin Fields transfer in and play 2 seasons of, nearly Heisman Trophy caliber football and himself a 1st-round draft choice. There's going to be a drop-off. I don't care. I mean, for all the people clamoring for Kyle McCord, Jack Miller, I'm telling you, mistakes would be made. They would be made.
Yeah. This is what happens when it merely is good. This is good play out of the quarterback.
Oh, absolutely.
But we're used to superhuman play out of the quarterback. That's what we've become accustomed to, because that's what we've been getting. And you're right. I don't see Kyle McCord or Jack Miller or Quinn Ewers necessarily having this team in any better position than what C.J. Stroud has had, and I don't think it's time to pull him. I think it would have been a mistake to have pulled him. Some of the stuff I saw online was when Ohio State was leading the game. Why pull the quarterback if your team is not even in a position to lose? Granted, it wasn't as comfortable as it could have been, but there were way more reasons for that than the quarterback play in this game. And I'm not being a C.J. Stroud apologist here. I'm just being real. This is 15 of 25 with a touchdown and a pick is merely a decent day, and it was his worst day of the 3. I think he's been great so far, especially if we don't know how badly that shoulder might be bothering him. Clearly, he's not in any kind of a brace. He's not doesn't look like he's wearing anything protective under that. So it must not be super serious, but it's something that he's kind of been dealing with. And yeah, there are nerves, there are butterflies that doesn't go away in game 2 or 3 of your career. That's something that is going to have to be dealt with in probably the second half of the season, is when you don't see that at the beginning of a game. So I say give him a break and relax. And in the meantime, got a pretty good offensive line. Got Travion Henderson. Master Teague's not a bad backup. Mayan Williams not a bad backup. If Travion indeed does take the starting spot. And by the way, Travion Henderson was the unsurprisingly the Big Ten freshman of the week, and he was co-offensive player of the week.
Who was the other? I didn't see. I saw the freshman of the week, but I didn't see who is he sharing the co-offensive player with.
Irrelevant. He shouldn't have been sharing it. Shouldn't have been
Okay.
sharing it. Yeah, who was
That's okay.
it? I don't remember off the top of my head.
That's fine. No, that's fine. Like I said, I think this week is an opportunity to.
I'm sorry. It was Peyton Thorne. I remembered. It was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty good day for Michigan State too.
Very good day.
Yeah.
But it's an opportunity for Ohio State to truly establish their running game because they're going to need it. It's just the nature of I'm always of this mindset. The weather is still nice, but as the calendar starts to get deeper and deeper into fall weather, the Big Ten, you never know what you're going to have, and I would rather be reliant on a strong running game to help that still maturing quarterback. So I think, that's what I would like to see this weekend.
And the wind in his face will keep those balls from flying over his receivers, so that should help too.
Sure.
All right, so Garrett Wilson led the team in receiving with 70 yards, and he had the touchdown. Jackson Smith and Jigba had 33 yards, 30 for Ruckert. Only 3 players had multiple catches, Ruckert with 2, Jackson Smith and Jigba with 2, and Garrett Wilson with 6 on 10 targets. So he was the go-to guy. I will have you know, Jesse Mirko quietly improving and doing better each week. 44.3 yard average on 3 punts, which doesn't sound impressive, but all 3 punts inside the 20, Chip.
That is impressive.
Yeah.
And Noah Ruggles is starting to kind of, I think out of necessity, I think Ryan Day is kind of, all right, I know he likes to be an aggressive play caller, but if the opportunity is there to put points on the board, knowing what kind of a defense that he has, he can't turn that down. So I'm happy to see Noah Ruggles is justifying the coaching staff's faith in him.
Yeah, made some good kicks in this game. Noah Ruggles. All right, the Buckeyes defense. We're not going to get into every player. I think it's worth mentioning that we saw more cover 2 in this game. We saw more blitzing in this game because to try to do something since the defensive line wasn't getting any pressure. Didn't really have a great deal of effect. Ohio State did manage to get 2 sacks in the game, and I was impressed in a few snaps that I saw him from young Tyleik Williams.
Yeah, Tyleik Williams is one of those guys that I like Gird's. I don't want to say comparison, but I guess comparison is probably apropos to Big Hank. Jonathan Hankins, kind of, like that kind of a frame and style of play. Now, one game does not, mean that Tyleik Williams now is in the starting rotation, but I feel better about knowing that there is a true freshman on the roster who, regardless of the rest of this season, that you can look forward to saying, all right, you've got one of these guys that's going to be stout in the middle. And as you said, he was able to come up big with the sack on Davis Brin late in the game.
Yeah. I continue to be impressed by Denzel Burke. I think he's coming along. By the end of this season, you're not even going to realize he's a freshman anymore. I thought that we saw some good things out of Cameron Martinez, not just the interception return, but he's an athletic guy and a guy who looks like he's maybe a little bit in the vein of Darren Lee, certainly a different position, but he's just a guy who finds the football and makes plays.
I wouldn't mind seeing Cameron Martinez get some opportunities at safety. Maybe I'm in the minority here. simply because, like you said, kind of like that Darren Lee, which is, I think, a really good comparison. You're talking about Cameron Martinez. It was evident on that interception return. He's used to playing with the ball in his hands. I mean, like that, was certainly welcomed and put everyone at ease, like that final touchdown to put Ohio State conclusively on top for the remainder of the game. But I just think he has kind of, like you said, that agility, the lateral quickness, that it certainly couldn't hurt.
Yeah.
Like at safety to kind of cover a lot of ground really quickly. Maybe that's what they're missing. No offense to Bryson Shaw, but it's not a lack of effort. It just seems as though he's not where he needs to be when he needs to be there. Maybe Cameron Martinez could get some playing time at safety and see what that looks like.
Yeah. So I thought Ronnie Hickman played a little better this week, and he led the team in tackles with 9, and he got an interception. So maybe some bright spots. I still think Cody Simon looks the most comfortable of the linebackers. We're still seeing a lot of guys. I still saw Steele Chambers out there. We saw Gayo Teote out there. So there's still a lot of rotation going on. Maybe not as much as there was, but maybe some of that rotation was good, because if Tyleik Williams can make plays like he did, then maybe he will earn a spot, because it just doesn't seem like we're getting as much as maybe we expected from Haskell Garrett. Maybe they're double teaming him more. I have to probably watch with that in mind to see what they're doing with him, what the opposition's doing with him. And of course, when you don't have Tommy Togiai on the line with him, that's probably going to make it easier for the offensive line to deal with Haskell Garrett.
Yeah, like I said, I can only hope, the healthy return of Zach Harrison. You can only hope that Tyreek Smith, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, JTT, Jack Sawyer, all these defensive ends all these accolades that they were receiving, that they start to put it together, because I mean the lack of pass rush is what's going to be causing a lot of heartburn for the fans and the coaches. If because that's, again, it contributes to that dreadful third down defense. I mean they're just without any kind of pressure. It's just going to be a long year.
Yeah. All right, there were not many champions, as you would expect after this performance. Offensively, tight end Mitch Rossi graded out as a champion. He has become quickly the best blocking tight end on the team. Jackson Smith and Jigba and Garrett Wilson each were graded out as champions, and Matthew Jones on the offensive line, it goes back to the penalties. A lot of the offensive linemen had penalties in this game. There were a couple false starts, a couple holds, and a face mask, and that was spread out amongst the offensive line. So what you got left is you got Matthew Jones, who didn't commit any of those, and he gets to be, although I think he might have had a false start actually, but he graded out as a champion. Player of the game on offense, champion Travion Henderson. On the defensive side of the ball, Tyleik Williams and Ronnie Hickman graded out as champions, and the player of the game was Cam Martinez. And the special teams players of the game were Xavier Johnson, who actually returned a couple kickoffs that were short. And it warms my heart to call this guy's name, Chip. Special teams player of the game, linebacker Cade Kashersky. You and I both remember John Kashersky.
That's right.
Who had a really great career going at Ohio State, but it was derailed by some very serious injuries during his career. Otherwise, he could have become one of the all-time greats at Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there weren't a lot of champions, but I didn't see, but that doesn't mean that I'm, it's one of these things where Cade Kashersky on the special teams units, I'm sure, in terms of his play, did things to earn that champion designation.
Yeah. All right, Chip, that ends our discussion of the Tulsa game, and it was much more than the game probably warranted. But I think it was important to talk about the good and the bad, and also what we saw differently out of the defense, which, again, it's still not good enough, but it may be, maybe, I stress, the first step in trying to correct it.
They have to. This is it. This coming game against Akron, it was better than what we saw against Oregon. It was, I guess you could say, in a matter of speaking, just the fact that in terms of the run defense, what they gave up to Tulsa versus what they gave up not only to Oregon but Minnesota in game one. So yeah, some improvement, but things have to be dramatically improved. Akron offers the last opportunity before I'm just going to say it, before you get into Big Ten play, and I know we're going to talk about the Big Ten. There's no margin for error.
No.
The Big Ten East is probably at its most competitive since, I'm just going to say it, since Rutgers and Maryland joined the conference.
This is probably the most competitive division since they did away with leaders and legends, I think.
Oh, it's easily.
So let's go through the Big Ten. It started on Friday with Maryland going to Illinois, and surprisingly, Maryland struggling, but the Terps did pull out a 20-17 win. Talia Tagovailoa threw for 350 yards and only one touchdown, but he didn't play great in this game despite those numbers actually being decent. And I saw some stat about his play at home versus away, and it's pretty staggeringly different how Maryland has been on the road with him at quarterback than at home. But the Terps go to 3-0, and Burt drops to 1-3.
Well, as far as Illinois goes, that's about par for the course, if we're going to be honest, in terms of kind of what we anticipated it being a difficult year. As far as Maryland goes, I mean, let's face it, it's starting to, they've got a very underrated MAC team in Kent State, who I know we're going to talk about Iowa later on, but they stuck around Iowa for a good portion of that game. So Maryland definitely needs to be continually improving.
Yeah. Chip, Nebraska dropped to 2-2, but put up a really good fight against their traditional rival Oklahoma in a little bit of a cross-conference game there. 23-16, the Sooners win it. They go to 3-0. They do not look anywhere near the third team in the country through 3 weeks in the season. And Nebraska, which lost to Illinois, staying within a score of Oklahoma, rivalry or not, that's not a great look for the Sooners.
It's not a great look for the Sooners. And if anything, I know moral victories are, they're not satisfying. And certainly, not anything that Scott Frost wants. But I think you're right that, the fact that this game was certainly much more competitive than most college football fans, myself included, anticipated. I think it allows something for Nebraska to build upon, and now they get to play against a very improved Michigan State team. So we'll kind of see what kind of direction Nebraska's season takes after this game.
Yeah. You mentioned Kent State. They went to Iowa City and lost 30-7, but that was a 9-7 game after one quarter and just 16-7 at halftime. So Kent State just couldn't get any offense going, but actually held up pretty well against the Hawkeyes.
I think Iowa is going to be. This might be the team to beat in the Big Ten West. I know we're going to talk about Wisconsin and Minnesota, and I just think so far from, even though they are not necessarily very flashy, I think Iowa is just as tough as can be, and they might be the team that emerges from the Big Ten West when it's all said and done.
They might be the team that emerges from the Big Ten when it's all said and done.
That's also true.
Yeah, it's possible. Cincinnati went to Indiana as the 8th-ranked team in the country, and the Hoosiers had not gotten off to a good start, especially getting thumped at Iowa, as we talked about the Hawkeyes. But Indiana really gave the Bearcats a game and led most of the way. They had led 14-10 at the half and 24-23 after 3 quarters. The Bearcats finally started to play well in the second half. I didn't think that Ritter, their quarterback, played very well in the first half. Played much better in the second half, and Cincinnati figured out some things and got some stops, especially in the fourth quarter. And Michael Penix, man, I'm not sure what's going on with that kid, but he was 17 of 40 for 224 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was Penix has had some rough games already this season, and Indiana's 1-2.
Well, they have an opportunity to get back to 500. They go on the road to Western Kentucky, so there's a chance that they can get back to 1-2, or excuse me, to 2-2. But you're right. I mean, Michael Penix hasn't played up to the level that Indiana needs. I know that overall Indiana's defense is solid, but if you're not getting effective quarterback play, I mean, it's probably all for naught. So they've got to figure out something, because after this weekend, then they go on the road to Penn State. So it's certainly not looking like an easy road for the Hoosiers.
Yeah. Marquee matchup of the weekend was Penn State hosting Auburn, and Penn State gets the 28-20 win. In this game, Auburn did have some opportunities that the Tigers squandered in this game. There was some very strange officiating in this game. But I'm not sold on Auburn yet for this season. I'm not sure about Penn State, but they certainly look much better than they were a year ago.
And they have Villanova on Saturday, so they'll have the opportunity to pad their stats, be 4-0 before they begin conference play. We just talked about Indiana the first weekend in October.
Yep. Purdue went to Notre Dame and got beaten 27-13. That's got a sting, considering Notre Dame has not looked good the last couple of weeks, and Notre Dame is quietly 3-0, surviving the Florida State game, surviving, was it Toledo last week?
Yeah, Toledo laid an egg against Colorado State.
Yeah, and then Purdue couldn't get anything done in this game, and in fact, Notre Dame had to pull away in the fourth quarter because it was 17-13 after 3 quarters, and then Notre Dame tacked on 10 in the fourth quarter to pull away and make it look more comfortable than it was.
Well, Purdue, they get the advantage of playing Illinois, so to kind of get back into a winning mode. I think Purdue is improved, but there's still a long way to go for them to become a threat within the Big Ten West.
Yeah, Purdue has got some offensive issues and maybe some defensive issues as well. Jack Cohn of Notre Dame only went 15 of 30 in this game for 223 yards. He did throw for 2 touchdowns, but only completing 50% of his passes at home against Purdue is not a great look for Jack Cohn or really anybody that quarterbacks the Irish. Michigan State had a big ask to go into Miami and get a win, but the Spartans did just that and win it 38-17. So in the end, a comfortable win for Sparty, and the number 24 Hurricanes dropped to 1-2, with the other loss coming to Alabama. And I am all in on the Mel Tucker bandwagon. If Kerry Combs' defense manages to get Ryan Day fired, give that call to Mel Tucker, because the Spartans look like they're already back.
They do. Congratulations to Michigan State, because even though they were very involved in the transfer portal, I was highly dubious of how effective that would be. Obviously, was completely wrong. The early results, like you said, 3-0. They've got that game against Nebraska that we talked about So I think that'll be interesting. They are looking very formidable. I'm just glancing at their schedule. Besides Nebraska, and they have Western Kentucky, and then they're at Rutgers. I mean, right there, like they might be bowl eligible before the middle of October. They definitely are much, much better, and that's a credit to Mel Tucker and that staff for getting this team ready to play and performing as well as they have.
Yeah, I've been impressed with the job they've done. We'll of course learn more about Mel Tucker's team when they start playing the Penn States and the Michigans and some of the tougher teams within the division. So we'll see how that plays out. We discussed earlier that Northern Illinois is one of the only few teams worse than Ohio State on third down defense, and Michigan beat the Huskies 63-10 to move to 3-0. Huskies fall to 1-2. Minnesota absolutely spanks Colorado in Boulder 30-0. Not a huge day for Tanner Morgan. He was efficient, but Trayson Potts runs for 121 more yards and 3 touchdowns. So it looks like they have found the answer to the Ibrahim injury in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, I'm happy that Minnesota did not allow the Ibrahim injury to derail their season, that they have come back strong. I know that they had a close call against Miami of Ohio in their second game, but like you said, they completely dominated Colorado. So it looks like that they're figuring things out. As for the Wolverines, again, very surprised that they have been as efficient as they have. And I'm going to give credit where credit is due. I know it's not sizzling, it's not sexy, but that team is very, very comfortable running the ball and being very successful whenever they do so. They, now granted, they haven't necessarily played against the most dominant, like you rattled off Northern Illinois, some of the most dominant teams defensively. That's the game on Saturday that I'm truly excited, believe it or not, truly excited to watch prior to the Ohio State Akron game. Is how do they do against an improving Rutgers team? I think this is going to just kind of see. We'll get a better understanding as to how much better not only the Wolverines are, but also the Scarlet Knights.
Yeah, it was just getting to the Rutgers game. They win 45-13 over Delaware. Not a tough ask, but Rutgers teams in the past, and given some of the Delaware teams in the past, that was never a given. Maybe in some previous years, but Chip, Rutgers has played 3 games, and Rutgers is 3-0, halfway to bowl eligibility.
And the advantage they have after playing against Delaware is they can basically say, oh, we played these guys last week. They wear the same helmets when they go to Ann Arbor. It's basically It's like psychologically they're not going to be intimidated. In all fairness, in all seriousness, they shouldn't be intimidated after the game that they gave the Wolverines last year.
Yeah, missed a field goal in overtime, or they would have beat them.
So I'm just saying, I'm really excited to watch this. As kind of like the preview or the precursor, if you will. For the Ohio State game, getting an opportunity to watch this game.
Yeah, and then finally, the Battle of the Nerds, Chip. Northwestern went to Duke and lose by a touchdown 30-23. Duke had a 21-0 lead after the first quarter. Just a terrible start for the Wildcats. And the Blue Devils get the win there as Northwestern dug too deep a hole and could not come back. It was 30-7 at halftime. So just the fact that the game ended up as a 1-touchdown game speaks well to the team, modeling themselves after, in the image of their coach, Pat Fitzgerald, as being tough and having some heart and showing some fight. But in the end, this just doesn't look like a Northwestern team that you would expect to see in the Big Ten championship game. No, not at all. I mean, they definitely have fallen back into bad Northwestern mode. They are, they're just not. I mean, I know that we were talking about, the toughness and the tenacity that you're used to seeing with Northwestern, but they've got a lot of issues. The fact that, like you said, that they made it competitive
against Duke, that's a great thing. But Duke is certainly not a good team. So for them to fall behind, as you said, 21-0, there are a lot of issues there. I mean, I think Northwestern is going to probably be home for the holidays this year.
Yeah, Northwestern struggling on defense. They allowed to Duke a 300-yard passer, a 100-yard rusher, and a 100-yard receiver.
Well, I mean, everyone knew it was going to be a transition with the retirement of Mike Hankwitz from the longtime defensive coordinator position. I don't think anyone thought it would be so swift and severe as it's playing out.
We've secretly replaced him with Kerry Combs. Let's see if anyone notices.
Wow. Ouch.
Yes. Well, hey, I will be happy to apologize to Kerry Combs once the defense turns around at Ohio State. I am not one that usually lays all the blame in one spot. Like I said earlier in this podcast, there's usually a lot of moving parts and a lot of things you can look at. I don't think that Kerry Combs is responsible for example, the fall off of the defensive line. There's got to be some culpability there for Larry Johnson, who's normally does a very good job and normally has his guys ready to go and making plays and getting penetration, but you don't see this defensive line getting penetration. You don't see them sacking the quarterback very often. You don't see them harassing the quarterback. They don't normally need to be bailed out by blitzers. Ohio State has not blitzed a lot since Larry Johnson's been here because they haven't needed to. So I think that you can blame, you can put some of the blame there. You can obviously put some of the blame in the middle of the field with the linebackers. You could put some of the blame on just inexperience. So there's plenty of blame to go around. I'm not putting it all in one place, but the buck does stop with Kerry Combs. He's the coordinator. And ultimately it stops with, even beyond that, with Ryan Day. And if Ryan Day believes that Kerry Combs can get the job done, then he's going to give him the opportunity to do that, and that's what he's kind of done with some of the reshuffling of the responsibilities. But if Ryan Day doesn't think that Kerry Combs can get the job done, then Ryan Day is absolutely compelled by his position and having the buck stop with him to making that change. And you don't wait to make the change once you identify that change needs to be made. So he didn't fire. We've certainly seen other coordinators already fired this season. We've seen head coaches fired this season. Ryan Day did not opt to go that route. So Ryan Day is basically saying, I believe that this can get better. And if Ryan Day is wrong about that, and if this defense continues to be historically bad, it's going to be a really long season for Ohio State. And ultimately, Ryan Day has to answer to people too. So I would not have thought that Ryan Day's job might be in jeopardy by the end of this season when this season began. But I will tell you, after 3 games and not making a change at defensive coordinator, he is now saying, this guy has my confidence, at least to do what I have him doing. And if things don't get better, now it's on Ryan Day. It's not just on Kerry Combs.
Well, I certainly think at the end of the season, changes will be made. I agree with you. I think as much respect as I have for Larry Johnson as a defensive line coach, I think to me that's what I've identified. Just the complete lack of pass rush. We talked about it earlier. That's heavily contributing to the poor third down defensive stats that you cited. I think Al Washington as the linebacker coach, I mean, way too much on the rotation. That falls on him. I think that the second, the one area of the defense that we thought going into this season that was going to be like the most glaring weak spot. Not that they played exceptionally well, but they probably played better than the defensive line and the linebackers is the secondary. Mm-hmm. I completely agree with you. I think Denzel Burke is a star in the making.
We finally saw some Seven Banks this week, so that was good.
Yeah, Cameron Brown is back out there. I will as the season progresses, and I'm like you. I'm hoping for improvement. I think it's going to be very, very difficult. I'm of the opinion that yes, the blame lies at the feet of Kerry Combs, but I'm also more and more as I see it, the fact that Burns was out calling the plays, Combs is up in the press box. I look at it like, okay, to me, it's the scheme. I'm going to go that'll be to me, it's like, why did you hire a guy who never ever coached this scheme if you're that hell bent on running it? And to me, it's obvious that the players don't feel comfortable running it with, like you rattled off Jeff Halfley and how good Boston College is defensively.
Mm-hmm.
They need somebody who now maybe Barnes, from what I understand, is better versed in it than Kerry Combs. So that might be the hope that we can hang our hats on, that maybe with the change in responsibilities that they'll be improved.
Hope
I don't know.
so. I mean, I did see them still reverting to that on some third and longs in the second half. I saw them go back to the single high safety a few times and go back to man, and they were picked apart on that pick play for the touchdown on a third and long. I believe it was a third and long for the last touchdown, when it looked like Lathan Ransom got torched, but really he had no chance to cover that receiver because he had to go fight through two other receivers and his own teammates to get to him, and it ended up trailing like tough Borland against Devontae Smith in the Alabama game. He had no chance at that, and these guys did run some cover two and some other defenses in this game that we haven't seen much of this year, and I don't think that they necessarily did a whole lot better on some of those drives where they employed some of that. So it may just be that they need reps. I'm not sure, but we need to see improvement, and I think we've probably beaten that horse into a fine, thin paste at this point. So let us turn our attention to Akron. The Akron Zips will come into Columbus, and the Akron Zips are not a very good football team, Chip, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They're pretty poor. They do have a pretty decent and athletic quarterback who is not only, his name is DJ Irons, and not only is he completing 76% of his passes, he's played in 3 games, he's thrown for 534 yards, he's averaging 9 yards an attempt, he's got 5 touchdowns, so only 1 interception, so he has kind of taken over, the younger DJ Irons has taken over for Cato Nelson, the senior. But not only is he playing well in the passing game, he's also the team's leading rusher. So on defense, Ohio State will have to account for DJ Irons on every play, and they'll have to stop him. I don't expect the offense to have any trouble throwing or running against the Akron defense.
Yeah, I think when just looking at some of the stats that DJ Irons put up against Bryant, I think he threw for 3 touchdowns, and I think he ran for another, and like 300 yards passing, 130 yards or so on the ground. Now, granted, Bryant is a lower division school. Akron probably is like, thank God we finally got a win.
Yeah.
But considering they opened up their season getting beaten by Auburn 60-10, they're used to being the sacrificial lamb. But this is, I'm almost thinking this is going to be kind of like not that because DJ Irons, I think, is like 6'6", but this is almost going to be like the Braxton Miller days of, when it was, Braxton left, Braxton right, like that was what basically constituted the Ohio State offense. I think that's what you're going to see from Akron.
Okay.
Like just in some way, shape, or form. Okay, DJ Irons, like you said, they have to account for him, regardless of whether he's running the ball, throwing the ball. They've got to do anything they can to slow him down, because that's basically all they have.
Yeah. Now, I didn't watch this game, but I know that against Auburn, he was 13 of 13 for 129 yards and a touchdown, no interceptions.
That's not bad.
Yeah, so I don't know if those were pop passes or, I don't know because I didn't watch the game, but 13 for 13 is pretty efficient.
Against Auburn, too. I mean,
Yeah.
you're getting your entire team is getting their teeth kicked in. Like I said, I think the final score was 60-10.
60-10. They lost by 50 points. And this could have also been in garbage time, and probably was in garbage time.
But even so, my point, the point I think you would agree is, here's a guy who, I mean, he's pretty much it. I guess I like to put it in a competitive sense. Even though he's now retired from playing football professionally, I remember back in the day when Kent State came into Ohio Stadium and they had a quarterback by the name of Josh Cribbs. I mean, he was basically, that's all they had. It was Josh Cribbs. And Ohio State thrashed Kent State, but Josh Cribbs, I mean, he did everything he could to try and keep the offense afloat. That's kind of what I'm anticipating on Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, and he's the kind of kid who can take it to the house if the defense gets out leveraged or is undisciplined. So we'll see how the defense responds. And I don't think we need, like I said, I don't think we need to go too deep into the Akron stat book, but he's the guy that will make that offense go if it goes anywhere, and that's DJ Irons. So keep an eye out for him. He is, as I mentioned, he's their leading rusher. He only has 165 yards on the season on 31 attempts, but that's almost 5.5 yards a carry. They also have a freshman running back named Anthony Williams who is getting 7 yards a carry, and another freshman running back who is not doing all that well at just 3 yards a carry. So I would say that DJ Irons is the guy. If you stop him, you stop the Akron offense, and I expect Ohio State will be able to mostly do that. DJ Irons might make some plays in the game, but it's too one-dimensional of an offense, I think, for Ohio State to not be able to win those battles. And I think that on the line, I expect the defensive line to have a much better game, although we won't know if it means that the defensive line is improved at all.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier in the season, that sometimes the worst thing you could possibly have instead of no confidence is false confidence. And that's entirely what might come about if all of a sudden the Ohio State defensive line is harassing DJ Irons and sacking him, and fans are like, oh, see, we're good. No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. So that's kind of where I'm at. Is I agree with you, is that this might not necessarily be the best barometer of the Ohio State defense. Can only hope that they are improved from last week. Last week against Tulsa, they were improved than they were against Oregon. And that's kind of where I'm at, is that I've got to see improvement after this game, because pretty much, all right, now you're going up against the big boys in your conference. So got to see it.
Yeah. And I will feel much better about Ohio State if, and this is a really big if Tulsa goes out and wins the rest of its games.
There you go.
They do play Cincinnati on the road, so it's probably not going to happen. But I don't know how good Tulsa is, but Tulsa certainly, everybody points to the loss to UC Davis by 2 points. One of the better schools, a division down, but they also did give Oklahoma State a pretty good ride, and then they hung around against Ohio State, and our guest last week said that this team sort of plays to the level of its opponents. So we'll see if that means that they don't play well in their next few games, or if they start getting some wins, because they're 0-3. Anyway, with Akron, Chip, I need to get your score prediction and your picks to click. Let's start with our picks to click. And I think this week we are starting off with defense, if memory serves. So give me your defensive pick to click against the Akron Zips.
Okay. Very difficult. I'm going to go Cody Simon. I just think we got to see somebody from the linebacker group step up. So that's, I know, a very poor rationale, but that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, I think for me, it's really just figuring out who is due to have a good game, and I'm going to go with Haskell Garrett. He's been okay. Obviously, he had the touchdown in week 1, but other than that, he didn't really affect the game a whole lot. And I think Haskell Garrett is due for a big game, like a 6 or 7 tackle game, which for a defensive tackle would be really good. So, and maybe even forcing a turnover or something. So I think Haskell Garrett is due for a good game, and if he doesn't get it against Akron, it's not coming. Maybe. I don't know. So that brings us to the offensive side of the ball. And Chip, I'm going to declare TreVeyon Henderson off limits for this week. Because
that's understandable.
I think it's too easy. I think it's just too easy. So because I could take him, and then he could run for 500 yards against this defense. It's not out of the realm of possibility. But or he could run for 100 yards and then sit down and watch the rest of the game as backups play. So it's kind of one of those games. And as such, I'm going to take somebody who's not a starter to put up some stats in this game, and that non-starter used to be a starter. I'm going to take Master Teague in this game.
No, that makes complete sense. I thought of going with a running back, but I know that it's starting to become kind of stale and predictable. I'm not going to go with Mayan Williams, even though I think he might have an opportunity for a bounce-back performance. Maybe a fire has been lit. I don't know. I'm going to truly go off the beaten path.
Okay.
And we've seen glimpses of some potential breakout plays from this guy. I think the possibility of some big plays from number 12, Emeka Egbuka.
Okay. Let's see how that goes. Yeah, we did see some more of the freshmen on the field in this game. I know there was a Marvin Harrison Jr. target. It wasn't a completion, but there was a pass intended for him in this game. And I did start to see some of these other guys on the field. We're starting to see a little more Julian Fleming rotating in. So, yeah, I like the pick. And when you go off the board and you're going to go bold, man. And you did.
Well, I'm figuring he's showing signs in the return game, and I'm just thinking that I don't want to jinx it, but I'm just thinking that might lead to bigger things, for him, a role within the offense in the second half. So that was my rationale on that one.
Well, it makes sense because Ryan Day coached under Urban Meyer, and that's how you get playing time, is you excel on special teams and you earn snaps on offense or defense. So that makes sense. It's logical. We'll see how it goes and see how these kids go, because you and I both thought we would see something closer to what we saw the year before last and the year before that, where it was a true 6-man rotation at receiver. But really, it's just been, just like last year, it's been the Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave show, with some Jackson Smith and Jigba thrown in there as well.
Right. I know Jackson Smith and Jigba is starting to become more and more. But yeah, I think there's more of a conscientious effort, like you said, Fleming, Marvin Harrison Jr., Egbuka, now granted more so on special teams, to try and get more and more people involved in the offense and the passing game.
Yeah. And this team, absolutely, I think you don't want to show it too much because you've got tougher games ahead. But if this team gets into the tough part of the schedule, Chip, and they don't use TreVeyon Henderson out of the backfield as a receiver, or Mayan Williams out of the backfield as a receiver, then they are committing coaching malpractice.
I know. Well, like I said, I think I definitely think that we saw glimpses of, from both of those players that you mentioned. I think that the possibility of expanded roles as receivers within the offense in the previous game. So we'll see if the coaching staff avoids coaching malpractice, as you said.
All right, Chip, I'm ready for your score prediction.
All right. I think the line has fallen from the 53 down to 49. That's, again, I'm not much of a gambler, but I really do. I think Ohio State is going to come out and have no problem whatsoever moving the ball. So I'm going to go Ohio State 56, and I'm not going to be so bold to say that they shut them out. So I'll say Akron 7.
That's incredible. I had already typed my score prediction in before you said yours. And I had not, it's not the same, but it's exceedingly similar. I said 56-13.
Okay. There you go.
I think Akron will, I think DJ Irons will make some plays, even potentially maybe late in the game when, if Ohio State gets some backups on the field. Again, I'm not sure that even against Akron, I'm not sure I trust this defense to be able to completely shut Akron down for the whole game. Maybe they pop a big play or two and end up kicking a couple field goals, and maybe they get a touchdown at garbage time or something.
Okay.
All right. Well, the good thing is we get to come back next week and see if we were right or how close we were. So there's always that. We also know, Chip, that the Rutgers game now has a kickoff time of 3:30.
Yeah, which is, I'm very happy about that. Very, very happy.
It's a little inconvenient for me, but I guess I'll make do.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, I got a thing at 7:30, so it's gonna probably bleed into that a bit. Yeah.
Yep. I understand.
So we will see how it goes, but I will get to watch it. I got the YouTube TV. I'll just I got it set up to record all the Ohio State games, so I will be able to pick it up from where I left off when I get to where I'm going, and then I can just kind of keep an eye on it and
there you
go from there. All right, anything else we need to discuss before we get on out of here?
No.
All right.
Let's hope for defensive improvement.
Yeah, exactly. All right. That will do it. Chip, where can people find you on the internet?
I can be found on the internet on Twitter at Chip Minnich. Last name is spelled Minnich. And I'm a contributor to Athlon Sports. Look for, even though I give you my score prediction, look for an article about Akron at Ohio State later this week on athlonsports.com.
All right. Look at that. We got an expert on the Akron Zips here on the Silver Bullets podcast. I can be found on Twitter as well, at Mike36Fan, and at BuckeyeScoop.com. I am the Grumpy Old Buckeye. I mean, the Grumpy Old Buckeye columns have my name as the byline, but still people in the comments call me Grumpy. And I guess that's not inaccurate, so what the heck. But yeah, my somewhat tongue-in-cheek grumblings about all the things that went wrong on the field on Saturdays, they usually will fall on Sunday, and you can read about them. And again, some of them are tongue-in-cheek entirely. Others, well, I'm actually pretty ticked off about some of this stuff. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag, a little grumpier this year than I have been in years past. But even if Ohio State goes out and wins by 70 on Saturday against Akron, there'll still be plenty of things that I gripe about, and that's the spoiled part of me, and that's what plays into it. It's just me being the spoiled Ohio State fan. And that's what the whole Grumpy Old Buckeye is all about. So give it a look-see and leave me a comment if you like there at BuckeyeScoop.com. Be sure to listen to all the other Buckeye Scoop Radio Network podcasts, even though we're not really a radio network because we're not really on the radio. Buckeye Weekly, Morning Scoop, of course the Sloopcast, and Gives in the Bank and all that stuff. So give all of those a listen. And you and I, Chip, will be back next week to dissect the Akron Zips game, and I'm looking forward to it. So that's a night game. Be sure to hydrate, get ready, get plenty of rest throughout the day, maybe take a nap, and we'll see how the Buckeyes do. So the only thing left for us to do, Chip, is the thing we always do at the end. Go Bucks!
Go Bucks!